This is Mike Cuddy, and I'm again here to talk about my latest project. It's entitled War Data, and the technology that I'm using this project is Flask, Python, Pandas, NumPy, MongoDB, D3 JavaScript, and React. So it's quite a lot of stuff in here, and basically for D3 and React, I was essentially wanting to work with them more and learn them, especially React. And I think from now on, you'll start to see me in almost every project. I'll somehow throw in React, and eventually I want to get to the point that all my projects are built fully with the front end all in React. So I'll get there. It'll probably be, I'm aiming sometime in August or September. I'll be really close to that. But other than that, this project, like I said, focuses on more data. Here's the CSV file from the data that I'm pulling from. And as you can see, it's not a lot of data. It's just every war that the U.S. has been in. It's nothing that big, and I mainly focus on the dead in the war, the wounded, and dead and wounded. So that's really what I was concerned about. So even out of all this data, it was only 3 columns I really wanted. So saying all that, let's go to the login page. Here's a login page right here, and as you can see, the background is this chess match here. And I was telling my wife that the reason why I use this is because chess is always kind of a symbol for war, with the whole strategy aspect of it. Now let's log in. I created this whole authentication system by myself, which I'm really happy how it worked out. So this is all myself designed. I'm not sure how secure it is. I think it's pretty good because I do use bcrypt, and I encrypt your passwords and everything down, and they go into the Mongo database. So here's a home page, and I first will say something about the colors I chose. Black and white. Obviously black is a color, especially in the West, of mourning. And I read that white as well in some other cultures as well. So I kind of wanted to have the site to have a feel of mourning. Over here on the left hand side on this aside here, I have these videos. This is a TED Ed video that talks about the Vietnam War Memorial, and it's educational and you learn about it. Here's another video, I Was Only 19. It's more of an Australian song about an Australian soldier that fights in Vietnam. And I actually came across this song a couple years ago. And I really enjoy this video, so if you want, it's entitled I Was Only 19, and it's a really good song. So here now, let's go in here in the center section, my main section as I call it. It talks about the project. The goals I've split up for the site is basically provide educational for people that come to the site, and personal is basically learn React, have my authentication system, and work with D3 JavaScript. And my interest why I'm doing this is, like I've stated before in some of my other projects, I'm a former Marine captain. I'm interested in warfare. I've always been interested in history, political science, and international relations. It's where my degrees are in. And besides, and I'm currently working on my web development degree. So decided to tie all my skills together, all my loves, and make this project. And as you know, if you watch these videos, a lot of my projects have that similar theme. Then over here is just some information about every American war. So if you want to read about the Civil War, just click this Wikipedia, and it brings you to the Wikipedia thing, and it has a long article if you want to learn all about it. So that's the home page. Now all of this was built with React. So all this front end is a bunch of React components with the nav bar, the header here. Everything is a React component that I built. So it's a good way to learn. Then when I go to the data section, this is actually an SPA between these two pages with React. So going back and forth. And again, this is all React components here. So if we look at some desks, now this is going to take us to a separate page, and I'm going to talk about this in a second. And when I submit this, it'll bring us to this page, and it shows you obviously the Civil War and World War II had over 300,000 deaths. So if I go back a page, what I was trying to do, and I think I need to learn how to use Redux, is right here. So I didn't want it to bring me to another page. I wanted to use React and Redux to basically update so that information that was on that other page would show up right here. And every time you submitted information, it would just show up right here. And Redux, I'm pretty sure I need that. I need to use that. I was going to use Ajax, but then I was having difficulty with React, and I don't believe they play well together, and that's why you have Redux, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So as you see my projects develop, you're probably going to see more aspects where you submit data and it'll come back and it'll stay on the same page. Now moving right along, let's head over to the thoughts section. And this is something I added in at the last moment. I actually was planning to do it, then I kind of forgot about it. Then when I thought this project was done, I was like, oh yeah, I need to add some thoughts. So here's just another thing. I have two asides, and I basically just wanted to fill up space. and some war quotes. I only put 2 here. I wasn't going to dig around and find all these war quotes. And a war poem, I recently watched a show on American Experience about World War I, and they had the poem here by Alan Seeger, Rendezvous with Death, and it's a pretty powerful poem if you go ahead and read it. Then also you could basically leave your comments. Working on my video. And I submit that. And you see it just shows up here. And so if I log out and another user logs in, they'll see these comments. And it's just basically kind of like when you go to a funeral home and they have those memory books there. I just wanted to leave where people would leave their thoughts about U.S. wars or anything like that. So that was a feature. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Adding this feature, I ran into some issues with the MongoDB that actually hung me up for a few hours. And it was pretty obvious what my error was. Now, the final page that I'll go to is my graph page. So I didn't have to go back like I did. I could have just gone over. And this graph I'll save right from the start. I know it doesn't look that best. It took me forever to get this up. I actually learned a little bit about D3 making this. But it basically does not work, I believe, in Safari. But it should work in Firefox. I tested it there and in Chrome. And so I just wanted some basic information about this graph and graphically represent U.S. war deaths. I mean, if you hold your mouse over it, it'll basically tell you Civil War and how many died the war. So as you can see, the Civil War, it's obviously right here. What is interesting, though, is being a history person, and up until about 2 or 3 years ago, they used to say the Civil War had about 600,000 deaths. And I think it was about 2 years ago they realized it was actually more around 750,000. So it went up by 150,000, which is almost insane if you think about it, because that's almost about how many people died in World War I alone. So you see how it really drops down dramatically. So this is probably one of the harder aspects for me to make on this project. I learned a lot about D3 making this, but it's something that I realized I'd take a lot more time learning D3. I think learning React was way, way easier than working with D3. So that's my personal opinion. So now let's go over and look at the code. I'm not going to show it all. There's my GitHub repo for that, which I'll post under the video link and everything. But there's a lot of stuff in here that I could talk about. But I guess I'll just talk about maybe 2 or 3 things. First is I wanted to have this comment section like you had back here. And right down here, this comment section. Originally, as you can see, I left this in purposely as what I was trying to do is have the username and add that to the user up here when they come in, and I would add a comment and everything like that. And then I would be basically pulling the comments from all the members. The problem that I was running into is I had a bug that when I went to the thought page, if a member hadn't left a comment, it would basically crash. And so the way I solved that is I got pretty annoyed at myself. And when I finally realized that after maybe 2.5, 3 hours, I know it's pretty slow and ridiculous, I basically created a whole other database called Thought. And within Thought, it would have a collection called Thoughts. So that would basically allow the individuals to create their thoughts. And so when I post my thoughts, I'm just pulling here. So it's basically 2 separate databases, one for users and one for thoughts. And I wanted to have them together, but this process here allows me to basically post the thoughts and everything like that. So it works really well. And now I want to show briefly the React. Here's all the React components. I have them all in my index.html file. I have to admit, I still don't know how to put React in its separate file yet, but I mean, if you look at how long this goes on for each of these components, I don't even know how many components in here, like 20 maybe more than that. So it was, I can say I got quite good at writing React components and understanding them and everything. So that's that aspect of it. Now another aspect that I want to talk about is here on the main page, when the user logs in, how I essentially encrypt it and everything right here. So when the password comes in, it gets encrypted, and that's again, I believe, over here in the Mongo to check how it's ensuring that the password's encrypted. You can read all my comments about how that's done. And I think for now on, I think I mentioned this in the Titanic video, I'm going to basically use the code that I wrote to basically encrypt all my sites and have that authentication system in there. So, and here's more of it right here. That's actually for the login page right here, and this is for the sign up. So they're both basically the same, very similar. So I think that's almost everything for my project. Like I said, it took me a while to build this project. I really enjoyed making it. I was kind of playing with all these different technologies, and I really enjoyed working with them. I have to admit, though, I really want to get good at D3 JavaScript, but for me, it was quite a pain to go through. I spent many nights going through that and trying to get that graph to look how it is, and as you can see, it just looks like a very basic graph. But at least it turned out to look somewhat decent. So, and I will say about D3 JavaScript too, it's more about the working with the SFG, excuse me. So that's what makes it really tough. But here's the graph. I guess, show over. I put all my code right here in the graph.html file right here. And if I scroll down, here's the JavaScript for it. So it took quite a pain to learn how to do all this. So overall, I think this project went really well, and look for more projects like this that get quite large. And I think my next project actually may not be as large as this one, but it's going to be focused on APIs, maybe for a news site or something like that. Just a simple site working with APIs and displaying information from an API. So I think that's everything, and I hope you enjoyed this video.